Welcome, dear friends, to a heartwarming story of love, sacrifice, and unbreakable family bonds. Enjoy the story. The sun was just peeking over the horizon as Jack Hawkins, a rugged 38-year-old truck driver, circled his massive semi-truck for the final pre-trip inspection. The loading dock of Miller's Freight in Omaha, Nebraska, hummed with early morning activity, but Jack was in his own world, methodically checking seals and tires. "Looking good, old girl," he muttered, patting the truck's gleaming red exterior. This rig had been his home away from home for the past decade, a constant companion on the long, lonely roads that crisscrossed America. As Jack climbed into the cab, his weathered hands gripped the familiar steering wheel. He took a deep breath, savoring the quiet moment before the 48-hour journey ahead. His eyes drifted to the faded photograph tucked into the visor. A smiling little girl with pigtails and a gap-toothed grin. "I'm coming home soon, Emma," he whispered, his throat tight with emotion. The CB radio crackled to life. "You're all clear, Hawkins. Safe travels." "Roger that," Jack replied, firing up the engine. As he pulled out of the lot, his mind wandered to the home he'd left behind and the daughter who seemed to be slipping further away with each passing day. The open road stretched before Jack like an endless ribbon of possibilities. Nebraska's flat landscape gave way to the rolling hills of Iowa as he headed east. Usually, the monotony of the drive lulled him into a peaceful state, but today, his thoughts were a turbulent storm. He couldn't shake the memory of his last conversation with his mother, Barbara, before he left for this run. "I'm worried about Emma, Jack," Barbara had said, her voice laced with disapproval. "She's acting out at school, talking back to her teachers. This isn't like her." Jack had sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I know, Ma. I'm doing the best I can." "Are you?" Barbara's words were sharp. "Maybe if you were home more often instead of gallivanting across the country." The accusation had stung, but Jack swallowed his retort. What could he say? That he was working these long hauls to pay for Emma's mounting medical bills? That every mile he drove was for her? As if conjured by his thoughts, a coughing fit seized him. Jack reached for the inhaler in the console, taking a deep puff. Emma's asthma. He'd never forget the terror of that first attack, how a simple cold had spiraled into weeks in the hospital, revealing a host of health issues they'd never known about. "Damn it, Linda," he muttered, gripping the wheel tighter. "Why'd you have to leave us?" The question hung in the air, unanswered, as it had for the past year. Linda's disappearance had left a gaping hole in their lives, one that Jack was desperately trying to fill with long hours and longer miles. As the sun began to set, Jack pulled into a rest stop. He needed a few hours of sleep before pushing on, but as he climbed into the truck's sleeping berth, he knew rest would be elusive. The road ahead was long, and the journey home to Emma seemed longer still. The next morning dawned crisp and clear as Jack hit the road again. He made good time, the miles melting away under his wheels. As evening approached, he found himself in rural Pennsylvania, about 300 miles from home. A hand-painted sign caught his eye. Hillside Market, local goods and fresh produce. On impulse, Jack signaled and turned off the highway. Emma loved the little treats he'd bring back from his trips. Maybe he could find something to soften the mood when he got home. The market was a charming hodgepodge of stalls and tables, filled with the colorful bounty of local farms. Jack wandered through, breathing in the scent of ripe peaches and freshly baked bread. At the far end of the market, he spotted a small stall manned by a kind-faced elderly woman. "Evening, young man," she greeted him with a warm smile. "What can I get for you today?" Jack found himself smiling back. "Got any suggestions for a picky 10-year-old girl?" The woman's eyes twinkled. "As a matter of fact, I do. How about some of my famous apple butter, or maybe some wildflower honey?" As Jack perused the homemade goods, something caught his eye. Around the woman's neck hung a delicate silver pendant, a heart-shaped locket that looked eerily familiar. "That's a beautiful necklace," Jack said casually, his heart racing. The woman touched it absently. "Oh, thank you. It was a gift from a dear friend." Jack nodded, his mind whirling. He'd given Linda an identical locket on their 5th anniversary. But it couldn't be the same one. Could it? As he paid for his purchases, Jack made a split-second decision. "Ma'am, I hope you don't mind me asking, but where do you live? I'd love to stop by and pick up some more of this apple butter before I head home." The woman hesitated for a moment, then seemed to make up her mind. "Well, I suppose there's no harm in it. I'm Mary, by the way. I live in a little village called Millbrook, about 5 miles down that road there." Jack thanked her, his pulse pounding in his ears. As he walked back to his truck, he knew he was about to take a detour that could change everything. Jack's hands shook slightly as he navigated his massive rig down the narrow country road. The sun had set, leaving him in a world of shadows and uncertainty. Every fiber of his being told him he was chasing a ghost, but he couldn't shake the feeling that he was on the verge of something big. The village of Millbrook appeared like a mirage in the darkness, a cluster of quaint houses with warm glowing windows. Jack parked his truck on the outskirts, not wanting to draw attention. He spotted Mary's car pulling into a driveway and waited until she disappeared inside before approaching the house. Taking a deep breath, Jack knocked on the door. Mary answered, surprise etched on her face. "Oh, I wasn't expecting you so soon," she said, stepping back. "Please, come in." Jack entered, his eyes scanning the cozy living room, and there, on the mantel, he saw it, a framed photograph of Linda, smiling and healthy, standing next to Mary. "Where is she?" Jack's voice was barely above a whisper. Mary's face fell, realization dawning. "You're Jack, aren't you? Linda's husband." Jack nodded, his emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "Please, I need to know. Is she alive?" Mary sank into an armchair, gesturing for Jack to sit. "Yes, she's alive. But Jack, there's so much you need to understand." Over the next hour, Mary unfolded a tale that left Jack reeling. She told him how she'd found Linda wandering along this very road a year ago, sick and disoriented, how Linda had been diagnosed with a rare, aggressive form of cancer, and how, in her fear and desperation, Linda had made the heartbreaking decision to disappear rather than burden her family with her illness. "But why?" Jack choked out, tears streaming down his face. "We would have faced it together. We could have—" Mary reached out, patting his hand gently. "She was scared, Jack. And she mentioned something about your mother convincing her it was for the best." Jack's blood ran cold as the pieces fell into place. His mother's insistence that Linda had run off with another man, her eagerness to step in and help with Emma, it all made a twisted kind of sense now. "Where is she now?" Jack asked, standing up. "I need to see her." Mary nodded, leading him out of the house and down the street. As they approached a small cottage, Jack's heart thundered in his chest. This was it, the moment he'd dreamed of for a year, yet never truly believed would come. Mary knocked softly on the door. "Linda, dear? There's someone here to see you." The door opened, and there she was. Linda looked thinner, paler than Jack remembered, but her eyes, those beautiful eyes he'd fallen in love with, lit up with recognition. "Jack?" she whispered, her voice trembling. And then they were in each other's arms, a tangle of tears and whispered apologies and promises. Jack held her as if he'd never let go again, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the beat of her heart against his chest. "I'm so sorry," Linda sobbed. "I thought I was protecting you and Emma. I never meant to hurt you like this." Jack pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "We're going home, Linda. Together. Whatever comes next, we'll face it as a family." As they walked back to Jack's truck, hand in hand, the village came alive around them. Curtains twitched, doors opened, and soon a small crowd had gathered to witness the reunion. Jack helped Linda into the passenger seat, then turned to Mary. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "for everything." Mary smiled, tears in her eyes. "Just promise me you'll bring her back to visit sometime." Jack nodded, climbing into the driver's seat. As he carefully maneuvered the big rig through the narrow village streets, Linda reached over and took his hand. "Let's go home," she said softly. And with those words, Jack felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The road ahead was still long, and there would be challenges to face. But for the first time in a year, he was driving towards something, not away from it. As the lights of Millbrook faded in his rearview mirror, Jack allowed himself to hope. Emma would have her mother back. He would have his wife. And together, they would find a way to heal the wounds of the past year. The truck rumbled down the highway, carrying its precious cargo home. And in the quiet of the cab, two hearts beat as one, finding their rhythm once again on the long road of life. The familiar streets of their hometown in Ohio never looked so beautiful to Jack as they did in the pre-dawn light. Linda dozed in the passenger seat, exhausted from the emotional journey. As they pulled into their driveway, Jack gently squeezed her hand. "We're home, sweetheart," he said softly. Linda's eyes fluttered open, a mix of excitement and fear crossing her face. How do you think Emma will react?" Jack leaned over, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "She's missed you so much, Lynn. We both have." As if on cue, the front door flew open. Emma stood there in her pajamas, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Daddy," she called out, "you're home early and—" Her voice trailed off as Linda stepped out of the truck. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stand still. Then Emma was running, her bare feet slapping against the driveway. "Mommy!" she cried, launching herself into Linda's arms. Linda caught her, stumbling slightly under the impact. Jack was there in an instant, supporting them both as they sank to the ground in a tangle of tears and laughter. "I'm here, baby," Linda sobbed, stroking Emma's hair. "I'm so sorry. I'm here now." Jack enveloped them both in his arms, his own tears falling freely. They stayed like that for what felt like hours, reunited at last. A sharp intake of breath broke the moment. Jack looked up to see his mother, Barbara, standing in the doorway, her face a mask of shock and guilt. "Linda?" she whispered. "But how?" Jack stood, helping Linda and Emma to their feet. His voice was steel when he spoke. "We need to talk, Ma, but not now. Right now, my family needs to rest." Barbara nodded, her eyes downcast. As she turned to leave, Jack called out, "And Ma, I think it's best if you stay at your place for a while." The door closed behind her with a soft click, leaving the reunited family alone in the quiet morning light. Over the next few weeks, life slowly found a new rhythm. Linda's treatments resumed, this time with Jack and Emma by her side every step of the way. There were difficult conversations, tears, and moments of frustration. But there was also laughter, love, and a deep appreciation for the second chance they'd been given. 2 years passed in a blur of hospital visits, family game nights, and small victories. And then, on a sunny Tuesday afternoon, they sat in Dr. Patel's office, holding their breath as he reviewed Linda's latest scans. "Mrs. Hawkins," Dr. Patel said, a smile breaking across his face, "I'm thrilled to tell you that you're in full remission." The room exploded in joyous cries. Jack swept Linda into his arms, spinning her around as Emma danced around them, whooping with delight. As they left the hospital, hand in hand, Jack looked at his wife and daughter, the two most precious people in his world. The road hadn't been easy, and there would likely be more challenges ahead. But they had each other, and that was all that mattered. "So," he said, a mischievous glint in his eye, "who's up for some ice cream to celebrate?" Emma cheered, and Linda laughed, a sound that still made Jack's heart skip a beat. "Lead the way, Mr. Hawkins," Linda said, squeezing his hand. "We're ready for whatever adventure comes next." And with that, the Hawkins family walked into the sunshine, their love stronger than ever, ready to face whatever twists and turns life had in store together.